are back. You're listening to You Would Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington, and joining me today, you guys already know, it's a big Flyers day, so of course we had the one and only Mr. Kevin Durso. How are you, buddy?
I'm good. You would have me on even if it wasn't a big Flyer.
Yeah, you're right. We're just the co-host at this point. It's not even.
I was gonna say, I'm on every week, whether or not, or week every other week, however we decide to do it, whether it's a big Flyers week or not.
Sure, but this week we do get to put your insider use, your insider status to use, right? Normally we kind of get some general fan talk about the NHL, but this week we got some Flyer-specific stuff that we might be able to dig a little deeper on.
More than we thought, for sure. I mean, now granted, I love how you're saying that, and I'm watching tweets of some of my colleagues at development camp today.
Okay.
I am not there. And look, there's a couple reasons. For one...
The first is you're dedicated to the show.
Sure. No, actually, in part, one of the reasons is that typically I can only go to those types of things on weekends anyway, so it's not really worth all the trouble for one day's worth of stuff. When I let's put it this way: if I get emails, and I very well might, about media availability with players, which is still being done virtually anyway, then I'm not gonna feel like I'm missing out too much on one day's worth of ice time that I'm not gonna get to see.
Right.
I really, to be honest, it's not. I've gone to development camps in the past, and it's very. It just becomes it's speculation on, oh, this guy's going to be fantastic, and literally it's just skill work.
Right.
I understand the idea of watching it in person. Because there's no fans there. It's not open to the public. Unfortunately, it was. They tried. And
right.
Unfortunately, just the landscape of things is not good enough to allow for it. But bottom line being,
Kevin,
what?
We're burying the lead.
No, we'll get to it. I swear. You said insider status. I'm explaining how it's not a development camp.
No, I know.
No, and it's like, but people go, and it's nice to watch just any action on the ice, period. But it's like, this isn't what you're waiting. Like, everybody's waiting for training camp. Now I'm getting to the lead. Because you're waiting for training camp. You want to see the guys we're going to talk about today. And and granted, there's guys who are in development camp who you want to see in training camp too, because Wade Allison's part of it, Cam York's part of it, Morgan Frost is part of it. You want to see these guys. But what they're going to be doing, let's put it this way. How do you think Wade Allison is going to look going up against the guys who were just drafted as 18-year-olds?
He should look pretty good at this point.
He's going to look outstanding.
Yeah.
And that means nothing until you put him out there against, say out there against this guy.
Yeah, let's jump straight in on this. Cam York's going to look great in development camp, and that's fine, and we can talk about that if we have some time. But the big story here today, in case you somehow have not heard, Sean Couturier is going to be a Flyer for a very long time. He has 1 year remaining on his current deal, but he is now eligible to sign an extension, and has done so, signing an 8-year deal with an average annual value of $7.75 million. Sean Couturier is going to be a Flyer for a very long time. And is very likely the next captain.
Probably. I don't love jumping to that conclusion per se, and I'll say why. Listen, by all accounts, he should probably be the next guy in line, no question about it. I just don't want to speculate on who's going to be here and who's not yet. Right,
it's kind of a Zdeno Chara, Patrice Bergeron situation. They were both just kind of there forever, and Patrice Bergeron kind of had the A forever. And when Chara eventually left, Bergeron took it over, and it really wasn't that big of a deal. And I think the Flyers are kind of picturing a similar situation with Giroux and Couturier.
Right, the bigger deal was Chara left, not only on his own terms per se, but left and went on to play somewhere else.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Like, the question that you're going to be asking yourself is, whenever it becomes time for Claude Giroux, is it going to be he's somewhere else, or is it the end of the career? That's what the question is. And then somebody will have to take over the role once that happens. And this certainly seems to be the most likely person to do that. That's fair.
For sure.
And for sure, look, if let's make something clear about the 8-year extension. The 8-year extension is beyond next season. He's still under contract next season it's in like the $4.5 million range or something like that. Right. So he's still under contract in the first place, and then has 8 more years. So he's got 9 years left in Philadelphia for now. Could be more later for all we know. I mean, it's funny. He actually made the joke a bit about it, where he's always signed extensions. He's never really been a free agent because he's always gotten to that point and goes, okay, I'll sign the next contract. Sure.
Sean Couturier has made a decision very clearly that he likes being a Philadelphia Flyer and has no desire to test the free agent market. He made that clear. Like, he just signed an 8-year extension to take him to 38 years old. Just shy of 38 years old. I'm sorry.
I'm not laughing, and I'm laughing not because, like, you're not wrong. I'm laughing because of the fact that sounds crazy in today's world.
I know.
Who says I don't want to test the free agent market at all? You know? And
nobody.
Because that's what it is. Like, you want to sit there and go, that's not really what it was, but that is what it is.
Alexander Ovechkin technically tested the free agent market. I don't know how many offers he took, but he didn't sign until after free agency began. Theoretically, teams could have called him.
All right, that's fair. I'll give you that. I mean, here's the thing. Well, let's put it this way. Theoretically, an expansion team could have taken him if they really wanted to.
That would have been crazy.
He
would have just signed back in Washington, but man, it would have been a crazy 2 weeks where he's in Seattle.
Or his rights are anyway. Yeah, I hear you. So
I think Ovi would show up just to humor everybody. He'd go hang out in Seattle for 2 weeks.
That'd be pretty funny. No, so, like, here's the thing with this extension, though. Like, at some point in time during it, does Claude Giroux have 8 more years left beyond next season? Probably not. Not when you're 34. You know?
Not at a high level, that's for sure.
Well, not even that. I think that eventually the shelf life runs out, and I think players know. And Giroux came into the league young, too. Giroux came in, I think,
and he's had some fairly significant injuries in his career. Nothing crazy, but he's had some decent... He's missed some time.
What, Giroux has?
Yeah.
No, Giroux. Now, Giroux really hasn't missed time, but he's had injuries that affect the offseason. That's the way it is.
That's fair.
He does not miss games most of the time.
That's true.
But he's had, not recently, ironically enough, but like some of those prime years, maybe the middle of the Wayne Simmons era, kind of, if you will, in those years, he would have off-season surgeries. He would have the core muscle surgery type stuff and things like that, and that does weigh on you after a certain amount of time and after a number of years.
Sure, and even just not getting a full off season of actual rest and prep and doing all the things you need to be doing, like rehabbing from surgery, takes out of that.
Sure, exactly, and whatever the age is that he hits, that he decides it's all over with, and that's certainly up to him. He could decide to play until he's 40. Maybe he keeps hanging around to keep chasing.
And you give him the contract as long as he's willing to sign it.
Well, and look, we're kind of again burying it a little bit because we're talking about Claude Giroux and Sean Couturier, but they do go hand in hand.
They absolutely do.
A lot of people saw what was going on with Couturier and basically were right there on the spot, going, "Okay, great, you did that one. Now announce Giroux." Like,
right.
And Chuck Fletcher got asked about it, and Chuck Fletcher basically said they've tabled this one for now, and that's both sides agreeing to that.
And I think that makes a lot of sense given the player.
Well, and here's the thing. Here's the thing that makes a lot of sense about that certainly from Giroux's standpoint. I know you didn't like me talking about it the last time we had a show, but I'll say it again anyway because I'm just being a realist. And I don't see it. I don't see this happening anyway. Now you've really, because let's just say there's another signing we're going to talk about later in the show that solidifies your bottom 6 even more, that says you're not taking chances on young players realistically.
Correct.
And if that is the case, then you are certainly at the very least saying you expect to be in the playoffs next year. And if that's the case, then nothing's going to happen like this. But if you're not in the playoff picture by a long shot come the trade deadline, you have to ask Claude Giroux that question. You have to.
Damn it. You're right. I know you're right.
But I don't think they will be. I don't think they will be. I think they're going to at least be contending. And
we had the same conversation last year, though, so I don't even know what to believe anymore.
Yeah, and Giroux's going to sit there and tell you that he's willing to ride it out and things like that. But I think what ends up happening is that, like, listen, if you don't make the playoffs with the way that this offseason has gone, then I don't know. I think Claude Giroux has to think about it. At least a little bit. Think about the possibility of, is this the best place to do the one thing that he has not done yet?
Yeah.
Essentially. Like, you have to ask it. But if you make the playoffs and can start to continue to get on a run, I don't know that they're going to, and I said this on 97.3 earlier this week, I don't know that if they have a solid enough year that they're just going to run it back completely.
Yeah.
But you can run back a lot of this with the 1-year deals even that you have, you can run back a lot of this the following year if it starts to go the right direction and you go, okay, the mix is pretty good. I like this guy. Like Rasmus Ristolainen, for example. Let's say things work out the right way with him. He performs well enough. You're doing well. The mix is good with him. He's a
solid top 4 guy. Right.
But I don't know that you're looking at a 1-year deal for some of the guys you've brought in and going, oh, you know what, Keith Yandel, I'm keeping you around beyond this year. I don't know if that's happening per se. Because it's now you're starting to block young players.
Well, right. And if you are, it's not going to be more than probably 1 more year.
Right. And I mean, you could play that game with them for as long as you want to, but Keith Yandel, Nate Thompson, these are the guys who you're sitting there going, we can replace them with younger players next season.
You could replace Nate Thompson tomorrow. Yeah.
Well, I hear you. You know what I'm saying. He's going to be, I said it last week, I think, 2 weeks ago. He's going to be the 4th-line center at the start.
I know he is.
Whether you like it or not, he's going to be the 4th-line center to start. And that's on the young
But you know
player.
what? Here's how I'm looking at it. If the biggest hole in your entire lineup is 4th-line center, you're not in bad shape.
Well, all right. We're jumping all over the place.
Oh, I know.
So here I want to stay on Couturier for now because let's put it this way. I texted Broads right after the deal went down, and let's put it this way. I used an adjective with it that I'm not going to use on our show, but it's not the worst one. I will say that it's just I'm still not going to use it. But I said he's a magician. Because I don't know how you sign, if you're Chuck Fletcher, I don't know how you sign Sean Couturier, your top line center for the last 4 years at this point. Since you showed up, Chuck Fletcher, since you were brought in, he's been the guy at the top. There's no question about that.
Your best forward.
Your best forward, one of the best two-way guys in the league, a Selke winner 2 years ago, or 2 seasons ago.
He's the guy.
It's funny I have to say it that way. He won the award less than a year ago, technically.
Right. He's the guy that if the Flyers turn into a big dominant team, he's your Hart Trophy candidate, more than likely.
Probably.
He's your centerpiece.
I'm trying to remember exactly, and I have a lot of what Fletcher said in his press conference written down. Because he mentioned 3 times about how he's an elite player, all that stuff like that. He called him their best hockey player right now, all that type of stuff, right? All that stuff. I classify maybe, not that he's their best player, it's just he's their best skater. Like, okay. You need, I think you want your best player to be your goalie, more than likely. But he's your best skater. And I just know what everybody, like, we've had these discussions outside of recording the show when somebody signs, and we have the same conversation every single time. Look at what that guy made. Look at he's not worth that. Oh, wow, that's not a bad contract. Like, we have those conversations all the time, and it goes one way or the other. There's really never any middle ground here.
Right.
And I saw that number, and honestly, let's kind of, and I think I tipped you guys off to it in the group chat too, because the Flyers tweeted out this little clip of Couturier smiling. Right. And everybody...
Extension?
Everybody kind of knew where it was going. And then the announcement came out. And when the announcement comes out from the team, specifically, and it was kind of funny because when the team tweets something like that out, even if they didn't... Like, first of all, they waited like 10 minutes to then put the next step out, which is here's the contract.
Right. They had the deal signed at that point. They were just teasing it.
But the funny part is that usually even when that type of stuff happens... The team's giving a hint, and then here would come Elliot Friedman or somebody like that who goes, got the numbers. It's an 8-year or whatever, right, or 7-year or whatever. Right.
It's and the Svetchnikov deal.
But nobody had the numbers until the team actually tweeted it out. There was no prior report. The team put it out there, and that was the number. So
Chuck Fletcher's running a tight ship.
Yeah, I guess so. But so I'm waiting for it to come out.
Or the mole wasn't in that meeting just by happenstance. He had the day off.
No, you know what else it is, too? It's timing, because it's the end of August. All of these people who do this on a regular basis, especially after...
just wrapping up their vacations.
Or are on their vacations right now we've got 3 weeks maybe until training camp. Then it's time to come back. But everybody else is sitting there on vacation. They're trying to... do all of that type of stuff or whatever.
Toes in the water, ass in the sand, et cetera, et cetera.
That's a nod to the rest of my weekend. That's pretty good.
But either way, Sean Couturier.
So the number comes up. So the tweet comes up, and you see the graphic. And the sad part is that the graphic, when they tweet it, is part of the story. It says 8-year extension. I go, there's nothing really shocking about that. I guessed 7, 8, whatever. It's not that big of a difference in terms of like, okay, it's 1 more year a term. Not that shocking. The number on the tweet, like when you look at the graphic, is so small, you then have to click on it.
Got to open it up.
The number, right? because that's all that mattered.
Because that's good marketing.
How much?
Just get the clicks.
Well, I hear you, but at the same time, you go, how much is it? You know, not that, by the way, people like me, by the way, as soon as we go and look at it, aren't going to spoil it for everybody else and go, oh, the number is this.
Well, and
I can't believe it was less than $8 million.
I don't think anybody expected, man, I don't know. If you had asked me 2 weeks ago, because I didn't necessarily know that they were working on an extension. I'm not surprised by it, but I didn't know for sure. If you had asked me 2 weeks ago, hey, what does an 8-year Sean Couturier extension look like? I would have told you that he's probably asking for 9. The team's probably looking at 7. They meet in the middle, 8, maybe player wins, and we get 8.25. So the fact that it's $500,000 less than that is absurd.
I honestly think that you're looking at least $750,000 less than I expected, maybe close to $1 million, you know, or above. Like I said, 8. Get ready for 8.5, 9.
Wow.
Because I'm thinking about it, like, and it's funny, like there's a lot of people who are going to look at where he ranks now in terms of money made. Guess what? Once next season's over, he's not going to be close to the top.
No.
By a long shot. I mean, there's guys who are on expiring contracts who
are going to make bank.
Well, Barkov's the first one that came to mind because he's up and he's going to make a ton of money. I mean, you've got all these other people who are going to. And look, is Barkov probably a flashier player than Couturier is from an offensive standpoint? Sure he is.
Fair.
But, so does that mean that helps him earn an extra $1 million a year? Maybe it does. I don't know. But
well, this is a great comparable for the Florida Panthers, honestly.
Well, that's the baseline at this point. I mean, quite honestly, there are players out there that are going to just use contracts from over
they might be able to pull Barkov under 11 is what I mean.
Sure, maybe that helps. I don't know. I mean, look, it is what it is. The bottom line is that I just don't know how he pulled that off. Because
no, it's a great deal. And I think I don't know if I could be happier. I mean, if it's a 6-year deal, I'm probably happier because, let's face it, there are concerns about the back end, but
you can't be concerned about if you're saying 6 would have made you comfortable, then 8's not a big deal.
No, then I'm not, right, and that's what I'm saying. That I'm supremely not worried about it, especially because, like we talked about a little bit in that group chat, Sean Couturier doesn't rely on his athleticism. He doesn't rely on his reflexes or his speed to be an effective player. He relies on his intelligence, his awareness, his hockey IQ, and those things don't diminish as much when you age. And the skating is always the first to go, and that's why guys fall off a cliff, basically, is because they stop being able to skate at an NHL level.
Right.
And that's not going to be a problem for Sean Couturier because he's never relied on that.
No, and let's be real. I don't want to call him a late bloomer per se because
offensively he was.
Offensively he was, exactly. Like nobody would have classified him as a top 2-way player in the game in the early parts of his career because
not really until about 2016.
Right. And
it took a while.
But now you're getting to a point where you know what to expect. You know, like.
And by the way, what you expect is 30 goals.
Pretty close to it, honestly. Yeah, and I mean,
he's paced out for 30 every year since essentially 2016.
Well, and look, one of the things too, at least about Couturier's game, is that you've got a guy who, I think anyway, like Claude Giroux, I'm trying to pick some of the others because now, like, I actually have to think about who's not here anymore.
You can't just throw out Jake Voracek anymore.
Like, all right, so like Claude Giroux, like James Van Riemsdyk, guys who are coming back that we kind of know what to expect. You're wondering if things change for them too. Like, power play wasn't good last year. We know this. So what if it's better? And what if it's better and Claude Giroux is able to score more goals or Sean Couturier is able to score more goals as a result? Like, Sean Couturier didn't play the entire year last year because he missed some significant enough time in a 56-game season for sure and still had 18 goals. So what's the cap for him when you get to in an 82-game season, let's just say 70 games, it's still pushing 30, and that's what he is.
Yep. And that's
exciting.
That's the kind of player that you don't have a problem signing for 8 more years. Like, really, especially if that number comes in under $8 million.
Well, that was what I was about to say. You sure as hell don't mind if it's $7.75 million per year.
Although I did mention it. The Andrei Svetchnikov contract, he signed essentially the same deal the morning of the Couturier deal. And
right.
Man, that's a good contract. Like, we talk about Couturier as being a really good contract, but man, that Svetchnikov deal, that's a good contract right there.
Okay, so here's what it is. It's a good contract because by the end of it, he's gonna be underpaid just like Couturier is now.
I think he's borderline already underpaid. He's a 40 goal scorer.
I know. I want to see if anything changes with Carolina this year because they have had some things change with their lineup.
They may or may not have Jesperi Kotkaniemi. That would help.
Well, I don't know if it's going to help as much as you think it's going to help. I get why it's a big deal, and don't get me wrong. Look, if this is a former 3rd overall pick, I get it, but I think that I wonder if they didn't take a bit of a small, and I say small, like almost minuscule, but a small step backwards. Like
I agree.
There's no doubt in my mind they're a playoff team, but I'm curious.
Man, I don't know. The Metro's tough. They're back in the Metro.
Yeah, but they have enough talent.
Who's in net?
It's Anderson and who's the other one?
You have to hope that Freddie Anderson is the Freddie Anderson of a couple of years ago.
And Antti Ranta, I think, are the 2 goalies there.
Did they get Antti Ranta? Okay, yeah. Never mind. Their net's more secure than I thought it was. Okay.
Well, and here's the thing: if they change the way that Anderson plays, where now he's not the number one guy,
right?
And you split those 2 down the middle. The only
Ranta's a great tandem guy already. We know that.
Right, he's a great tandem guy. The only thing you need to rely on is that they stay healthy because
neither one of them can hold the load over a long period of time.
The thing that doesn't make sense about their goaltending is the fact that they had an up and coming goaltender who's going to make a ton of noise.
Who only wanted $3.5 million.
Right.
Hello.
Yeah, I know.
You didn't sign Alex Nedeljkovic so you could troll the Montreal Canadiens? That's what you did?
There's a lot. Look, they've done a lot of things that people have scratched their head about,
All right. Well, something I'm not scratching my head about. We've talked about it for a couple of weeks. The Travis Sanheim extension is in. It's a 2-year deal, $4.675 per year. So, Kevin, I think that's a little... Is that a little rich given what Travis Sanheim did this past year?
All right, given what he did
just a touch.
Well, here's the thing. Anything is going to be rich for anybody who's basing it off of last year, because
last year was just ranted top to bottom.
Right. He's not near as bad of a defenseman as people think he is for the "what have you done for me lately" crowd.
Valid.
Like quite frankly, he might have been one of bar not set high. Obviously, he might have been one of their better defensemen in the last half of the year last year. Because and I'm saying, like I said, bar not set high because at that
not at all.
You got to think about what April was for them, and if Sanheim's playing better than most, you're pretty much only holding it up to Provorov at that point. Like,
right,
Myers was not looking good. Myers couldn't even stay in the lineup. He was in and out, scratch, not scratch. Gostisbehere was doing the same thing. Hagen Braun are Hagen Braun.
They're Hagen Braun.
I mean, let's do it this way. Cam York got 3 games at the end of the year and probably looked better than others in those games. And it was the first 3 games of his NHL career.
Coming off an NCAA tournament run.
All right, so I need to preface this whole thing with a little bit of story time for a second, because on the last show, and I went back and I listened earlier in the week, because you said something that was, it just happened, it almost worked out exactly as you predicted.
Okay.
Because you turned around and said, because I assured everybody, and this ended up absolutely 1,000% being the case, that this was not going to reach arbitration.
Fair enough.
Arbitration was literally going to be this past Thursday.
Right.
It didn't even come close to this past Thursday.
No, this deal's been dry for a week.
To be honest, my guess was Monday or Tuesday, when, we've already gotten to one of the moves the Flyers made on one of those days. Actually, the Couturier contract I think was Wednesday, but beside the point. and they made another move earlier, like I think it was Tuesday.
Yeah.
So I get it. At that point in time, this order of business is over. So yeah, you can focus on that other.
Chuck Fletcher came back from vacation and was handling a little business before the rest of the offseason.
To be honest, no. So I wrote it down because you told me. I came on here and I said, listen, I'm going to be away for like 3 days. Friday night, most of Saturday, most of Sunday. And now Friday night, we were in the same spot.
Yes, we were.
And nothing happened. It was nice. You get out for a
CM
little bit.
Punk came back, but nothing else happened. That's fine. We don't have to talk about pro wrestling.
I meant Flyer related. I meant that.
I know.
I meant Chuck Fletcher decided not to do anything on that particular night. So enjoy yourself. Get out for a little while. It's good, right? And you told me, I swear this is exactly what you said on the last show, that you said Saturday 1:05 p.m. That's when the press conference will be. I got lucky with the press conference. The press conference wasn't until Monday, but the signing happened at about 4:30 on Saturday.
That's pretty funny.
As I'm not kidding to you, okay? Close enough, because this, like I said, this happened at like 4:30, 4:45 on Saturday. It wasn't the you called it. You said it was going to be at the most inconvenient time. That's what you said about it.
Because that's how that works.
Okay, it wasn't quite the most inconvenient time because, listen, it was the most inconvenient time because at the moment I was standing on a beach at a music festival and it was raining, no less.
Oof.
So
that's a tough one.
So you got that part. But it wasn't the most inconvenient time because that was before I didn't have much cell reception for the rest of the night.
Well,
so
that's good.
So I was able to at least send a tweet that said, "Oh, this is done now." But like hell, I was getting a story up that weekend. Like I ended up writing about it on Monday. Like like the person
can wait
who comes back from vacation, or whatever.
Yeah, it can wait.
But it was fine. In all seriousness, so now let's get back to the money of it because you're asking if it's high. I think I told you last week, and I'm not sure if I had done it in the group chat before, like at the beginning of all of this and at like the off season and all that stuff. But I had kind of tried to, as things went along, and I've been asked about it a lot. What was the contract situation going to the money situation, I should say, not necessarily the contracts, but the money situation for Carter Hart and Travis Sanheim going to look like? Because it felt like that was going to be the basis of the rest of what they decided to do in the offseason. I mean, granted, they did 90% of the rest of the work before those two deals were made.
Right.
Which makes a lot of sense. But that required literally playing with essentially $8.5 million of cap space and trying to push it to the side and say, I have to hold this for these two players. So I'm working with, instead of, because what's the number? I think the number's like 82 million or something like that, right?
81.5, right?
All right, so roughly 82. That's why I'm rounding up.
Yeah.
And so you're taking 82 million and saying realistically the cap space I'm working with is 74 million or 73 million.
Right.
And you're trying to build the rest of the team minus two players around $73 million.
Yeah, it's tough.
It's very tough. And this is why when the Couturier deal came out, this is why I said Fletcher and used the word magician, because how do you navigate that? And you can have discussions about what people are going to make. I know that, look, it's very highly profile what Rasmus Ristolainen is going to make for 1 year of service to your team. At least for now.
Yep.
I get that. And to be fair, I don't know how to read this deal for Sanheim completely. From a money standpoint, it's about what I expected, honestly. If you would have asked me,
I don't love it
hold on,
from a personnel standpoint. Sorry, go ahead.
Because I told you last week, Carter Hart, it was, in my estimation, at the beginning of the offseason, I thought he was going to get $3 to $3.5 million. He got closer to $4 million.
Okay.
I understand why in the grand scheme of things, because he started 60%, 65% of your games in the last 3 years or the last 2.5 years, or how, like, it's weird because if his numbers were off of 82 game schedules, he's starting roughly half of your games.
Right.
But that's not the case. So
Right.
he sat out half of the year last year for a variety of reasons. At the end, an injury. He played the last half of the first year of his career, essentially, because he came up mid-season.
Right.
And then there was that year in the middle that was just flat out
he was just really
outstanding.
solid.
Right.
Yeah.
So there you go. So that's why he gets $4 million. I honestly had Travis Sanheim at $4.4 million.
Okay.
So I'm only off by about $300,000, and I say that's not that big of a deal.
No, that's fair.
That's why I'm like looking at it and I go, that number did not shock me that much. And if that was what you had to, now the thing that concerns me is the 2-year term, because the 2-year term to me does not solidify his future,
especially because it walks him to UFA.
Right now, granted, I'd have to see what they do moving forward beyond just the 2 years in terms of where else are you going to grab money from? Like, let's just
it's going to depend on if Ristolainen comes back. He's a big one here. My camera was unplugged. I'm working on it.
It's all right. We'll leave it in.
That's fine.
Well, all right. Here's something else too, by the way. So, because now, granted, I didn't think about this at the beginning because now I just looked at it and I went, oh, okay. The Sanheim deal is for 2 years, so what happens now? But also, in 2 years, James Van Riemsdyk's contract is up. And when James Van Riemsdyk when his contract is up, when the JVR contract is up, you get $7 million back.
Right.
And that's a pretty big deal too.
Right. Yeah, but at that point you're also paying Joel Farabee, there are other things to be concerned about, and at that point your cap gets pretty sticky.
Joel Farabee's not going to break your bank in the third year of his career either.
Man, I'm telling you, if he comes out and scores at any sort of reasonable pace, like I'm not saying he gets the Svetchnikov extension, but he might be looking at 5+.
No, I don't see that. 3 to 4 again, because he's still too young.
Yeah, I get it.
You know what they're going to do? Chuck Fletcher's going to hand him the Oscar Lindblom, I hope this is the smallest contract you sign.
Okay, that makes sense. That's
what I think you're going to get, especially if the cap doesn't move that much from this year to next year.
Right. Yeah, and I don't think it's going to. I don't think it's going to go up very much at all. And I don't think it's really expected to, right? We've heard some things about maybe like a $1 million increase in 2 years.
Possibly. I think I would say there's also something to, I don't know. I think there's something to the possibility, and we have a tab for it. I'm not going to pull it up just over this, but like the ads on the helmets brought in some revenue. They're talking about doing that on jerseys in a couple of years. And listen, that's why you should accept that. If you don't like the idea of changing it, it's not going to be so noticeable that it's the European leagues.
Yeah, it won't be.
But at the same, like, if they don't do much more beyond that, and it helps them move the cap up $1 million a year because of that revenue alone, then do it.
And I also really do think people are underestimating how much of a big deal ESPN's going to be.
Perhaps. I mean,
I think the exposure it's going to bring to the sport will generate revenue, and I think within the next 2 or 3 years, you're really going to see a lot of capital come into the game, just kind of from being the long-term exposure on ESPN starting to kick in.
Right. Now, I know we're talking a little bit about with Sanheim's deal and how it kind of equates to who's up after next year and all that stuff and who you have to sign. Like, they don't have a lot of... There's been... Now the Couturier extension's done, they have a lot of groundwork done for next year even. I mean, I know...
A lot of things are kind of locked in.
No, it's funny to say because they have 11 players under contract next season. You know, it doesn't sound like a whole lot, but when you consider the fact that you're basically sitting there asking yourself, who's going to make it out of this year, right? Like, you have to wait and see. If Martin Jones plays well, then you might bring him back. But if he doesn't, you're going to move on and you're going to try again, or you're going to use one of these younger guys maybe.
Right, or one of the younger guys is finally going to come up. Right.
You're doing the same thing with Ristolainen. You have Braun and Yandel under contract for 1 more year. And let's put it this way. So that's the thing. Maybe you do bring back Keith Yandel if you like him as a power play guy, and Cam York replaces Justin Braun.
Sure.
Maybe you do that. I don't know. But, like, you're going to make room for those guys in some capacity, and Ristolainen's the same way. Like, if you so what I'm getting at is that you're going to have, like, at the moment right now, they have I'm trying to find the exact number. Where's the space they have? They have like $20.5 million of projected cap space ahead of next season. That's with only 11 players on the active roster, though. So obviously that money's going to disappear quickly. But
Yes.
it depends on how many of these players, like, it depends on how many younger players you end up burning, like, that money on, so to speak. Like, how much that increase happens. Like, if you spend $2 million of 20.5 on your backup goalie, that's a chunk, you know? And
right.
Same thing with whatever Ristolainen get now. But, like, I look and I go, there's not... based on what guys are making this year anyway, there's really only 2 contracts that are big money already that you know could go in a similar direction. And that's Ristolainen and Drew. That's it. I mean, there's really nobody else that they have that you sit there and you go, this should be difficult. Like,
theoretically, Atkinson could turn a little sour with 4 years left, making almost 6. Theoretically. Not,
no,
you know.
I'm not talking about the ones that are already on the books.
You're talking about like the long term.
I'm saying if you have $20.5 million and there's
right,
really only 2, like, those 2 players, let's just say hypothetically they combine for like $11 to $12 million. Hypothetically, I don't know if that's really going to be the number, but let's just say that's what it is. Then you still have $8 million left. Now you have at least 7 more contracts to sign on $8 million. I get how that's a struggle, but at the same time, look at who you're talking about. If you let go of Justin Braun at near $2 million and say, come on in, Cam York, that's only $1 million, and it's one player. And Wade Allison's still going to be on like one of these early deals, I believe. Or Allison might be up after this year. He's an RFA. But again, how much experience, if he only has 1 full year of experience, then how much money are they going to demand? It's going to be kind of on the low end. Like, you're going to do that with all of these guys with the exception of maybe Joel Farabee. That's really the only guy I can think of. And you might play the exact same game a year ago, like as this year, with the 1 year, $900,000 style contracts for a bunch of veterans, if that's what you want to do to fill out the whole deal.
Well, and another way to fill out the team and maintain a little flexibility, you mentioned signing some cheap veterans. And we also got an announcement the Flyers have added Derick Brassard on a 1 year, $800,000 deal. And I think the group chat pretty quickly concluded, and please tell me if you disagree here, that it's a nice, clean deal. A good, solid bottom 6 center.
I actually think that, hold on, because I think I have the number wrong in this one as opposed to the other one. I think it's 825, but...
Oh, is it 825?
Yeah,
okay.
It's okay. We can make a quick adjustment to it. I think the number's wrong. But regardless, like, one of the things is you don't get much lower risk than a 1 year deal at 825 or whatever. Like, the Keith Yandle deal is 1 year at 900,000, right? Like, you don't get lower risk than a year in less than $1 million.
Right.
It doesn't work any other way than that. Like, you're just looking for an insurance policy. Now, here's something funny. Let's do story time while you get the graphic up and all that stuff.
Yep.
So, I'm going back a little bit. On July 24th, I'm in the middle of this is day 2 of the draft, I think. Maybe post day 2 of the draft. So you're coming on at this point in time. Think about what's been done to this point. The Ryan Ellis deal has happened. The Shane Gostisbehere to Arizona deal has happened. The Ristolainen deal has happened. You've also had the Atkinson for Voracek deal happen. So you've made 4 different moves. You've moved out pieces. You've brought in pieces. You have 3 new pieces currently as part of the team. And free agency the following week is looming at this point. You are, 3 days, 4 days away from free agency at that point. So the buildup is there, and you're wondering, is there anything that this team could do in free agency now that they've gone out and done trade to acquire 3 new players? What else could they do? And little did we know, the Keith Yandle signing was down the road. We knew they needed a backup goalie, so Martin Jones being signed wasn't a surprise. The Nate Thompson one was a little bit of a surprise, let's be honest.
Yeah, then, not a pleasant one.
Well, it's not a pleasant one for people like me who have to live on Flyers Twitter, essentially, but that's beside the point.
Listen, that's fair. I would be one of those people if I was on Flyers Twitter, so I definitely understand. But yeah, it's... There we go. All right. Appreciate you.
Yeah, no, it's okay. So I got a tweet. I'm gonna have to try to see if I can't scroll back and find it again, because it was basically I started having conversations. It's funny actually. One of the conversations I had as I was leaving for the first vacation of the month. You got to realize the vacation I'm talking about. I said vacation last week in the tweet when the Sanheim deal came out. It was a weekend away. It was like a long weekend. Like that
it was a little bit of a staycation almost.
Right. To a degree. I mean, if you want to call the shore that, sure. I mean,
fair.
But beside the point, I was legit on my way to vacation, and actually there were people who were asking about the possibility of a Couturier extension. And I'm sitting there going, listen, I'm not saying that they wouldn't look at it. He's the first guy that they are going to try to extend if they can.
Right.
But at the same time, I think they just want to ride the year out and see where it goes. And I wouldn't be shocked if the players wanted to do that as well. You know, like why wouldn't they? But
right after with how bad last year was, like no one would blame you sitting here going, well, I could be a free agent next year.
Well, because that's the way I took the comment about Giroux. Like, we're all just waiting to see what happens. Let's not jump to a conclusion. And for what it's worth, bring back the two forwards that are always at the top of the list, at least based on who's left, that they're at the top of the list when you talk about core players who have been here for a long time.
Yep.
Before you bring back both of them, kind of just see if this mix is any better than the one that you had previously, right?
Well, and if you have to, you could always pull the old Thomas Plekanec where you trade him at the trade deadline and then he just re-signs with you in the summer.
Okay, so July 24th, I get a question on Twitter, okay? This is after, so I had written a story on Chuck Fletcher's press conference then talking about how they couldn't bring back the same players, all that stuff. We talked about it before. And I get the question.
The press conference, yeah.
Right. Now I get a question that relates to kind of it kind of was a very broad spectrum of everything that was left going into free agency because the question was, so assuming about $8 million for Sanheim and Hart, $3.5 million remaining, assuming no other moves to roster players. They need a goalie, a 3-4 center, and then they threw in defenseman, but put Moran in parentheses, which is fair. Okay, I get that. Who are the affordable candidates for backup goalie and center? This is July 24th.
Okay.
Now, I had sat there and said, now, granted, neither of these guys proved to be near as affordable. I mean, I think James Reimer did. I mentioned Reimer's name. I think he did. He just wanted a 2-year deal, which I think, at least by my estimation,
I don't think they would have done it.
I don't think they wanted a 2-year deal.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
Not for your veteran
and
goal.
And definitely one who ended up not being as cheap as what I thought he could have been was Linus Ullmark. I get it. Look, I would have loved for that to have been the possibility, but when you're going to get starter money for 4 years in Boston, you go and get starter money for 4 years in Boston, right? Like, let's just be real about it. But...
And by the way, they're going to add Tuukka Rask halfway through the year for $1 million, and it's just not fair.
Probably.
It's just not fair.
I don't want to assume anything with him just yet, but
he has said, "I'm going to come back and I'm going to be a good cheap goalie for them."
I know, but I still don't want to assume anything.
He said it.
I still don't want to assume anything.
Oh.
Because I also think the half of a year is to see how the league decides to handle everything this year with, stuff.
Maybe. That's fair.
I mean, he did. You got to remember, he left the bubble for a good reason, but he left the bubble. And if you're reaching a point, like there are guys who are retiring around the league in general. I know for some of them it's time. Like when one of the things that happened in the last 2 weeks that we're kind of straying. Well, it ties into Derick Brassard because it was a teammate of Derick Brassard's at one point in time. Henrik Lundqvist retired, but was it that shocking? Not really, because Henrik Lundqvist had gone through the open heart surgery, and then is it really at this point in time? Have you done? Okay, aside from winning the Stanley Cup, have you done everything that you set out to do?
And it's insane.
And you know what's going to happen? The guy's getting his number retired next year already by the Rangers, and
that's crazy.
He's going to be a Hall of Famer.
And that's an original 6 team, by the way. Like this isn't the Nashville Predators retiring a number. I know we joked about them a couple of weeks ago.
It was not even a conversation. Like it was so obvious they were going to do this, and it makes every sense in the world.
You know what the worst part is? Watch the Rangers make the run this year.
I know. See,
watch it happen.
But it's hard for me to view that the same way as if he would have retired as a Ranger. Like He did, but you know what I mean. Like, he's retiring after what was supposed to be a year with Washington.
Right.
So to me anyway, I don't view it the same way. Like,
I guess that's fair. I kind of forgot he ended up signing in Washington because he never ended up playing for them.
And that was a big deal because now in one way or another. But anyway, so
they signed.
I get asked. The
Capitals signed a couple people last summer that were weird. Zdeno Chara, Henrik Lundqvist. It's a weird one.
So I get asked this question. I gave Ullmark and Reimer as the two goalies, and obviously neither of them ended up being true.
Right.
But whatever, that's fine. And I go, so as for the 3 or 4C, it would probably an internal fill, perhaps. And then I mentioned two names. And I said if the price isn't too high, and I think the price ended up being too high on Sean Corrali because Sean Corrali got a nice little deal in Columbus, and
fair enough.
Speaking of which, another departure from Boston, by the way.
Yep.
Boston's lost a few players.
Yeah.
They
also added Taylor Hall, and their power play is disgusting.
But they had Taylor Hall last year too. That's all I'm saying. Like
they were really good with him.
Oh, I know, but I'm just saying they've lost some pieces. But
we've talked about Boston kind of falling apart a little bit. I know.
The other name I mentioned in the tweet was Derick Brassard, and I said so. I was already kind of on this sort of feel for this a month before it happened. That Derick Brassard should have been on the radar, that he's a guy who I think would fit in. He very much becomes... It's really funny that we're comparing, or at least I can compare it to the Keith Yandel contract in terms of the low risk and almost exactly what he's doing.
It is. It's the exact same. It's the same deal.
Which is not only in the sense that it's the same deal, but in the sense that it's the exact same protection plan for a younger player. Like, This is... If Keith Yandel is if Cam York's not ready, then... This gives us plenty of options, right. and on top of it, an extra body to throw in when we need to.
Right. Yeah, and this is the same. Derick Brassard is there as your 3C.
Is there for Morgan Frost.
Mm-hmm.
You'd love to see Morgan Frost take the leap. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. That's all. Right. And if it doesn't right away, or if it doesn't from the very at all this year, then at least you have this guy here, and it's only a year. Like, these are very savvy moves by Chuck Fletcher to go out and get guys who have 1 year deals that you don't need to commit to for that long.
Right.
Like, you can. I understand. Like, I can understand the frustration around 1 year of Ristolainen when you gave up a lot in a trade, and it's kind of like, well, this guy should be much more, or whoever was going to be that player should be much more of a centerpiece than what a 1 year 1 year remaining on Ristolainen's contract is, right?
Right.
But at the same time, you needed to grab other guys and say, this is how we can easily work around the cap for a year and still make it work that next year it doesn't change much because they're not under contract and we have the same money back. Like, you didn't make deals that you're going to sit there and go, oh, no, they're going to be buying that one out later. Like, you really didn't.
Right.
Quite frankly. I mean...
You didn't trade for and immediately sign to a 5-year extension Andrew McDonald.
Basically. I mean...
God, that move. Oof. But yeah, I really think that Chuck Fletcher has... done pretty much all the right things. I think Chuck had a very, very, very good summer. My biggest complaint is the Ristolainen move and the Gostisbehere trade that kind of accompanied it. But that being said, I don't think that's a terrible move. So if that's my biggest complaint, then again, I think Chuck has been pretty stellar this offseason.
I don't mind the Gostisbehere move because looking at what it is, and I understand maybe throwing in 2 picks to get rid of cap space is a little bit of a worry, but at the same time, here's where I'm at with that.
Yeah.
It's if trading Gostisbehere's contract also opened up the rest of the cap space that you didn't already have from the Ellis trade, like
right.
If it turned into, I mean, now it sounds like a lot, but if it turned into Nolan Patrick, Phil Myers, Shane Gostisbehere, and 2 picks to basically get Ryan Ellis on this team at the same amount of money, then so be it.
Oh, right. Well, if you combine it slightly differently, and it's Shane Gostisbehere, 2 picks, Robert Hagg, and a first to get Rasmus Ristolainen, that deal looks even worse. So it kind of just depends on how you package
that's
it.
The problem.
Well, right, and that's, I think, how a lot of fans associated with fans associated the cap space you acquired with trading Gostisbehere away so directly with the Ristolainen move because they happened in such quick succession.
Right.
It looks like you traded all these things to free up the cap space to get Rasmus Ristolainen.
Well, and here's why that is, because you made the Ryan Ellis trade and didn't really have to sacrifice much anyway. You had that cap space already.
That was your free, right? No, I know.
So it's not nearly as big of a deal in that sense. Like, you go, okay, the Ellis deal was the Ellis deal. It almost happened in another month with the way that everything happened because everything else happened so quickly together. See, in that sense, though, I don't know why we don't lump together the rest of them, though, too, because the Ristolainen deal happened on Friday, on a Friday, I should say. And the next day, because what everybody really freaked out on, and listen, if there was a year to trade away your first-round pick, it was this year.
That's fair.
And I do think, kind of speaking to development camp again for a moment, that if the very first pick that you made, who, by the way, is speaking later today, Samu Tuamala, if he turns out to be a first-round talent that you got in the second round, all things considered, because nobody had any idea about anything, right? Then I think that all is forgiven with the first-round pick going to another team when you acquire a talent, you know?
So most of the time, I'm not interested in those articles. It's like, oh, 2007 redraft or things like that because they're just so, like, hindsight is 2020 garbage. This year, I will be interested in reading a 2021 redraft 10 years from now because there was no scouting, because it was such a wonky year. This is one year that I will actually read those articles for. I know you've seen those, right?
Oh, yeah, I've seen those. Look, they're interesting sometimes. There's no question about it. So anyway, I feel like that's what we associate it too much with. You're right. Like, I understand it. The Gostisbehere move was made to open cap space up, and then the counter move to it was Ristolainen. I get that. Yeah,
and just as a whole, I do think, again, I think it was a very, very successful offseason. That is the weakest move to me. It is still a solid move. Well, still made the team better.
To me, I don't care about the Gostisbehere move opening up cap space when I look at everybody else that was brought in. That's why I don't care about that one.
Yeah, Shane Gostisbehere wouldn't have really been playing all that much this year anyway.
Well, exactly. And listen, so to me, the two questionable ones, at least going in, that where somebody's got something to prove, is Ristolainen, obviously, because we've talked about it enough, but Martin Jones also.
Yeah.
Look, you can sit there and look at Nate Thompson and say, well, that's a really questionable one, too. But, Nate Thompson, you know what his role is going to be. And the only thing you have to worry about is basically if Nate Thompson's playing 82 games this year, you've got a problem. That's the thing. If he's playing half of the games, maybe a little bit more than that, that's just let's just say, I don't care if Nate Thompson plays 55 to 60 games this year. And I know it sounds like a high number, but because he's got to be the guy you bring in when blank is hurt. I don't think that Chuck Fletcher's wrong to prepare for the possibility that, because I think there's two things that he's preparing for that he didn't have before.
Right.
And that's, one is you're preparing for injuries again, and you're trying to be proactive in this because, again, he's mentioned it a couple times, condensed schedule. So you're talking about a lot of games early, a lot of games late, and this gap in the middle, which he said earlier this week, sounds like it's going to be on the table still, like it's going to still happen, at least for now.
Right.
And then you've got the COVID list again, because that's not going away this year. And what happens if you lose a player for 7 days through no fault of anyone except for the fact that he ends up on this list? You know? And what happens if it's, not ideal, but what happens if it's, again, like it was last year? What happens if it's Claude Giroux or Sean Couturier or somebody of that level?
Or multiple players. Right,
where you have to move people up, and you don't have a guy who has that veteran. Now you're playing the minor league team again, and it's
tough.
I'm trying to remember who they even had called up for some of those games like that. But okay, I'll give you some then, because this is the type of players you had last year. it's Connor Bunnaman and Carson Twarynski playing in the outdoor game because you have nobody.
Connor Bunnaman, dude. Ugh.
Now, Bunnaman's got a new contract, and I actually don't mind him as much because I think he knows his role better. Twarynski
I agree.
was a little bit, Twarynski didn't really show as much, which is why, again, he's in Seattle.
Can't wait till he wears an A for the Seattle Kraken under Dave Haxtell.
Oh, man.
It's only about 2 years away if he plays, 11 poor minutes a night.
I hear you. But you get the point. So that's what I'm saying. Those are the two to me that outside of it, like everybody else kind of has a purpose. If they're a depth player, then you're mainly bringing them in not only to say, I've got, I need to have more depth in case a young player isn't as ready as we want him to be, but also to make sure you have pieces that you can just bring in whenever you need them in case injury, COVID list, whatever it may be.
Yeah, I don't think anybody really had a problem with the Derick Brassard signing because it gives you some flexibility, it gives you some depth, it gives you some injury insurance.
And what is he again? What is Derick Brassard in the same vein as when Gandil signed? It's, hey, I played with Kevin Hayes and AV with the Rangers. They
really are getting the boys back together.
It really is a bring them together kind of thing, and
because that always works super, super well.
Well, I hear you, but at the same time, who knows? We'll see. But let's put this. Well, Brassard's best years came under AV. Let's just put it.
You either ride the chemistry or the boys slack off because of the chemistry. It's one or the other.
Well, and let's make something clear about that signing then too, because when we talked to Brassard on, I think it was the same day as the Couturier contract, so I believe it was Wednesday. And we had Couturier on Thursday.
The least significant media availability of the day.
It may be, but it wasn't, because I'm going to tell you right now. You know who orchestrated this deal? Alain Vigneault did, because Derick Brassard was contacted by AV more. Like he goes, I talked to AV a lot, and then the deal came into place. So
we really are just getting the boys back together.
No, I think this is
Emilio Estevez skating around with the duck call.
Okay, I like that, but that's funny. I like that analogy. Now, in all seriousness, with this, I don't care how you want to look at it with that. Like, it's also the end of August. Training camp is legitimately probably it's less than a month away because their first preseason game is less than a month away at this point. And if you're going around and looking at the free agent market that's remaining at this point and saying, here's a guy out there who I know a lot about. I know what kind of player he can be. And let's put it this way. I don't hate this signing for a different reason. And it's not like, it's the AV chemistry or the idea of playing with Kevin Hayes and Keith Yandel again. Less than a year ago at this point, and legitimately, this guy was having success against your team in the playoffs with the Islanders.
That's true.
I know he played last season with the Coyotes. He was an Islander then, though. God, it feels so weird to talk about it like that. Like that, literally, in less than a year, like guys played for one team and are moving on, right?
56 game schedule is wild.
Yeah, I know. Well, starting a season
and then there was bubble hockey in August last year.
But anyway, so that's what I'm saying though. This guy was scoring goals in that series and being a very effective player for the Islanders in a series that they ended up winning. So there you go.
He was a son of a bitch in that series.
Exactly. And so why wouldn't? And he's tough. He is a tough player to play against. I don't know. Look, I'm not going to call him the best defensive player out there in the world. I'm not saying that. He actually probably gives you a little bit more power play time than PK time.
He's your classic bottom to middle six, grindy, gritty. He's everything. He's Scott Lawton.
That's funny you say that. That might be who he's playing with.
I would love that line. That line.
Brassard, Lawton, and Wade Allison. Who says
Man,
that?
Do you want to go up against that line? Do you want to play 14 minutes a night against that line? I sure don't.
I hear you. In all seriousness, though, that's why I like it, because this is what you needed in the event that Morgan, I've seen Morgan Frost's name pop up many times on Twitter during this whole thing, and it's usually these internal discussions that people are having going, man, I hope he pans out, but I just don't know, and all, you know what I mean? And everybody should feel that way. You just don't know. The guy has 4 games of experience or something like that in the last couple of years or whatever. He had 4 games of experience last year is what it was.
But he scored 2 goals, Kevin. So it's very important.
I think I think it's last season as a whole.
Oh, okay.
He played 4 games total. I think 2 in them. They didn't even have a minor league season yet. Okay. Actually, they didn't even have a minor league season yet, so that's not even it. But you know what I mean. He barely played last year, so you're going off of that. That's all you have left to go off of with him. And you hope it pans out for him, but you need to be better prepared for that. You need to be better prepared for all possibilities, and this is another example of it. And I think he fills the third center role naturally, quite honestly, and I think that that's a big deal for them.
So I have a question for you, and we didn't prepare a graphic for it, and I'm going to kind of take it off I'm going to catch you by surprise here.
Oh, here we go.
If you're Chuck Fletcher, if you're the Flyers GM,
okay,
you can address one issue, future assets, whatever, notwithstanding, blah, blah, blah. You can address one roster issue.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing? It doesn't have to be a specific move, but are you upgrading your fourth line center? Are you trading?
Are we talking during the season, you're saying?
No, right now.
Right now?
Yeah. If you're making, I don't think there's going to be any more moves. I think the team is just about done. But if you're attempting to win a championship this year, if you think this is the team, whatever it is, what is one thing you think this team needs that you would address if you were Chuck Fletcher today?
With the cap space that they have?
Let's pretend it's kind of flexible. You're not getting, a $10 million player, but let's pretend there's some flex involved here.
Well, because this is what I'm trying to say. I'm going to dodge your question. This is
okay.
No, well, sort of, because all right, if you wanted me to change something, I'd like a more solidified backup goalie option. Maybe is what I would change.
Okay.
Because if I could take what money they have left and the $2 million that Jones is making and have a better option than that, then so be it. But again, I think what that came down to was finding somebody whose mind wasn't already made up about where he wanted to go.
Man, Antti Ranta would have been fun.
But Antti Ranta, I think, took multiple years, and that's the difference. I think they wanted 1 year, wait and see how it goes, and move on. If it doesn't work out, kind of moves.
And hope Kirill Ustimenko's ready at some point.
Or Felix Sandstrom, or Sam Ersson, or whatever.
Insert rookie goalie here.
Right. Well, I don't even think it's that, because I think you can come back to this next year and do the exact same thing over again and say, can I find a guy on a cheap deal? You know what else doesn't play into or doesn't go against you at least? I mentioned the $20.5 million in cap space they already have, that they have available for next year for a number of contracts, but there's guys leaving, right?
Right.
You know what you don't have to factor in, or what you can factor in immediately, I should say? What Carter Hart's making. You couldn't do that at free agency this year. You had to wait it out. That's true. And I think you had to take as cost affordable of a method as you could without committing too much.
Right.
And
I think they did that. Because
what was your other option? Braden Holtby on the same contract, who also didn't want to move east anyway, so he was out of the picture.
You weren't getting him. Right.
Yaroslav Halak, who I think had his mind made up on Vancouver long before this ever came to be. So what else did you have to choose from? Everybody else wanted 2 years or got more money than you could probably afford, and that's what it came down to.
Yep.
That's the hard part for me when you sit there and say, what would you change? Everything ends up fitting in a certain way where you go, they really calculated what they had to do.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I mean, look, if money wasn't the object and you're going, well, what's the one other thing that you wish they would add? Well, then sure, everybody else, probably a goal scorer. But as I've said many times before, that's the final piece of the puzzle that you bring in when you have everything else. And there's no guarantees that next year they're going to have everything else.
Right.
Because next year you're going to have to still replace certain pieces. Now, if you can find a way to do that, and I mean, listen, when's go time? Maybe go time is in 2 years when, again, if you can sign everybody reasonably who has expiring contracts and whatnot and all that type of stuff, if you can find a way to use James Van Riemsdyk's $7 million cap hit that's no longer going to be on the books and go out there and look at a top free agent instead, maybe that's the time to go for it. They're certainly kind of going for it now with the group they've assembled, but it's going to be really interesting to see how it all plays out, because now you're looking at a 1 year trial period with a lot of these guys, and that's, nothing says it's all on the line quite like that with, at least nine. Actually, if the roster is 22 players, then half of your roster is on expiring contracts, and your coaching staff needs to make sure these guys are ready to go because of all the changes that have been made. Now you hope you have the right mix this time, and your general manager probably is safe safer than the rest because of the fact that at the very least he went out and did his job this offseason. That's why he's a little safer. But but you've handed your coaching staff a roster that you think can compete, and you've got new players, and a lot of them who are not solidified beyond this year that you've got to start to factor that in. And I'm sure that in 2 weeks we will talk much more about that type of stuff because of the fact that now we can actually we were supposed to do today. We were supposed to talk about Travis Sanheim's contract and then start to look ahead to what the season could be. And we only had like 5 minutes to do that this time because of all of the other stuff that happened, the Derick Brassard deal and the Couturier extension and all that stuff like that.
Yeah, things got very busy in a hurry.
Yeah, before we get out of here, do we want to touch on this one tab below too? Because
before we get onto that, I did have something to say.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, I think Chuck Fletcher has set it up to where you're right. I think it's kind of all out on the line here. It will be very, very easy next summer for Chuck Fletcher to nuke everybody. Like, if this year turns sour again, AV's gone, coaching staff gone, 11, again, entire roster turnover with your UFAs and your et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Not completely, but I think that there's a lot.
A significant enough change that I'm willing to call it nuke everything. And Chuck, that's it. Chuck Fletcher said, all right, boys, I have done my job. I've given you some players. Go.
You said you called it the press conference earlier, which was the one where he said all this stuff right after the draft, basically.
Yeah, the prophecy press conference.
Well, you know what, though? I'll tell you what. The press conference he had earlier this week where literally, like, he said, he goes, I can't live through another year like last year. It took years off my life. Well, first
Good for you. I can't either.
Right. But isn't it nice to hear a guy sit there and say, like, I just can't do that anymore.
A guy who cares and will tell you he cares. Bobby Clark cared, but he'd never tell you he cared. Paul Holmgren cared, but he would never tell you he cared. Ron Hextall would never tell you he cared, and honestly, he might not have. He might have been a robot. But Chuck Fletcher cares and will tell you he cares.
And look, in all fairness, like I thought one of the biggest things that was said about that Couturier extension, I know we're kind of going backwards, but to sit there and say, if Sean leaves, then the direction of the franchise changes. Like, the importance of, I didn't even want this guy to be a free agent because if he even thinks about leaving, we're in trouble as a franchise. That tells you everything you need to know about Chuck Fletcher's mindset moving forward and what he's trying to do with some of these current pieces and how he's trying to build around it. So you just established who you're building most of the team around with that then. Like, you just said it right there.
Yeah, and he made it clear what's to be expected. And like you said earlier, 2 weeks from now, we're going to talk all about this upcoming season, and I, for one, am supremely excited.
Now watch him go out and do something else for no apparent reason and somehow do it with nothing available to him because he can.
Tomorrow morning with 2 weeks until our next show. All right. And on that note, we're going to get out of here, and we're going to get out of here on a little bit of a sad story. Before we flip that over, I'm going to give our outro because I would like to go out on kind of a moment of silence here. So our outro here, it's a little off kilter and it's not as clean as it normally is, but follow the show on Twitter at YWT Podcast. Make sure to follow Kevin at Kevin_Durso, and we're at Sports Talk Philly too. You can find the show everywhere, sportstalkphilly.com, iTunes, YouTube, etc. That's going to be it for this week. Is there anything else you had to say before we kind of touch on this last topic here?
Nope. Let's just go into it.
Sounds good. This one's never easy. The brother of Kevin Hayes, former NHL player Jimmy Hayes, if you wouldn't mind flipping that banner over for me, passed away the other night at the age of 31.
Yeah, it was about a week ago now. It was funny because, or not funny, but like the irony of the situation is that it happened, and then Brassard signed like I think the day after with the Flyers, which is like kind of almost a nice thing for Kevin Hayes that another buddy of his gets to come in and be part of this situation, like with the season next year, and he's got.
Hopefully, it helped him.
A lot of people said that it's going to be a really good thing for Kevin Hayes that he's got somebody like Keith Yandel this year in that room.
It's going to be fantastic for him.
Knowing all of this and things like, because he posted on Instagram about it. It was incredibly touching.
Beautiful post.
And I got to tell you, knowing him and knowing the way he is in that room, that very much is the truth, because a lot of the things he does, whether he goes on to something and makes an appearance and talks about it or whatever, they always talked about each other kind of like they were almost one person. Like that's how they would talk about
the Hayes brothers. Yeah,
they really were the Hayes brothers, and it was very shocking. I actually, for a little while, I didn't tweet about it because I wanted to make sure that it wasn't some crazy report. Like you almost don't believe that stuff, and then more and more kind of built up, and you go, "Oh my goodness, this is really true."
The night after his kid's second birthday party, it's the saddest thing, and there are no words. We just want to extend our deepest condolences to Kevin, the Hayes family, everybody.
Yeah.
And like I said before, we're gonna go out, no music, just on a little bit of a moment of silence here in memory of Jimmy Hayes.